Welcome to Sweet Valley Diaries, the podcast where we ask the question, is it cool for 16-year-old twins to share the captain of the basketball team?
No, because that would be incest.
Book number 1, Double Love.
Share the continuing story of the Wakefield twins and their friends, their laughter, their heartaches, and their dreams.
Welcome to the very first episode of Sweet Valley Diaries. In each episode of Sweet Valley Diaries, I'll bring on new friends of varying levels of Sweet Valley fandom, whom I have subjected to the novel in question for that week. For our first episode, I have two ladies who are very dear to my heart and to my home. My two beautiful roommates, Selah, Kahrmann, and Hazelton. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us.
Before we get into the very first book, Double Love, the first book in the series, written in 1983, before either of you was born, by like a number of years.
10 years.
10 entire years.
10 years.
So
I didn't even know these books existed.
Well, that was the question. Did you know the books existed? So no.
I think I knew they existed, but I'd never read one.
So definitely never read one before.
I think the first time I heard about it was when I was reading Roxane Gay's Bad Feminist.
Yeah.
And she had an essay about it.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because it was actually reading that essay that made me kind of realize that I'd been neglecting my blog, Sweet Valley Diaries blog, and thinking about a way that maybe I could rekindle my excitement about it. I still wanted to keep reading the books, but I was also thinking a lot about making a podcast, and here we are, recording this podcast. Yeah. So perfect.
I don't know about Kat, but I definitely grew up at like peak Mary-Kate and Ashley time.
Oh yeah.
When they were like coming out with the like movies, where it was kind of like they were going on this Home Alone kick, where they were taking down all these like,
always, like
international bad guys
in some sort of predicament, and then they, saved the hot lifeguard.
I remember like one of the books. It was like it might have been a mystery, like a mystery novel. I don't really remember, but they were like on a cruise ship, and
that sounds right.
Like solving some problem that the ship was having.
It's cool that they know how to fix cruise ships. That's
I know,
a
right?
Good skill for
they are pretty savvy 12-year-olds.
Sweet life on deck.
Well, so
two blonde twin boys living on a boat.
So we're finding a theme here. We've got Zach and Cody, we've got Mary-Kate and Ashley, and of course we have Elizabeth and Jessica Wakefield, the lead characters who are really going to helm the entire Sweet Valley series. So it's really about them as the series unfolds. They kind of take a back seat to some of the other characters. They get their moment in the sun, but there is not a single book that doesn't focus on them primarily.
Are there any books where they pull like an evil twin switch?
Oh,
like
don't even get me started
only one
on
sibling.
What kind of evil twin madness
cool.
is to come.
Because it's like a soap opera where it's like someone's identical cousin shows up that's been dead for 10 years. I love it.
There are them evil twins as each other, and there are external evil twins. There are thriller series. There are super special editions, mysteries. The series went on for a really, really long time. A lot of stuff happens.
Love it.
So I'm just curious what your initial impressions of Jessica Wakefield and Elizabeth Wakefield are as we open the book. Welcome to Sweet Valley. Here we are. Here are our main characters.
Man, I wanted to like Elizabeth a lot more than I did. Because I, like, immediately, Jessica was a huge bitch. Like, she had ulterior motives. You just know it going in. But then, like, Elizabeth never stands up for herself. Mm-hmm. And to me, that is just so irritating. And I get it. Like, it's all for, like, dramatic effect. But it's also infuriating for me to read.
Totally.
to watch it unfold.
So even for listeners who have read Double Love, which is probably a lot of them since it is the first book in the series, they probably don't remember what happens in the very first chapter of the first book. So it's not unusual. Like, what we're describing is typical of pretty much every chapter of every book of Sweet Valley High series, but specifically what's happening is Jessica is complaining about being the ugliest person alive.
Which gets sucks through when you've got an identical twin, because they're the second ugliest.
She gets through the whole description of her ugliness, where the author cleverly points out through every line how beautiful this person that's talking is.
Right.
And then Elizabeth chimes in, what am I, Miss America? You know, hello, I'm your identical twin here.
Right.
As the book goes on, we see that Jessica clearly has very high opinions of herself and of her...
And a little bit of a skewed perspective.
Oh, maybe.
A little bit.
So, in the first chapter, that's happening, and the other big thing that happens is that there's a phone call to the house from Todd Wilkins.
Todd Wilkins. What a fox.
We'll have to talk. We'll talk specifically about just how foxy Todd Wilkins is.
Yes.
But so he calls. He wants to talk to Elizabeth. Jessica says Elizabeth is busy. Elizabeth is not busy.
Doesn't she say, like, Liz is on a date with some other boy or
she
something?
constantly, throughout this book, is talking about how busy and popular Elizabeth is for reasons unknown. We know that Elizabeth has a huge crush on Todd Wilkins. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about Elizabeth as a character, or like the twins. So they've got the descriptions that come in every book come at the beginning of this book, of course. In the future, it's that thing like, did you guys ever read Babysitter's Club?
Yes.
Those books always, like the second chapter, you could just skip. Because it was always like, Claudia eats a lot of candy bars, even though she's diabetic. Christy's a tomboy who has a big family. It was always like, right down the line.
Yeah.
You could just skip it. And this book, these books don't quite have that. But they do all describe the most beautiful girls.
I know.
A perfect size 6. They're 5'6". They have beautiful blonde hair. I think I wrote down that this book describes Jessica's perfectly shaped bronze thigh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like later on it talks about her like long tan legs, and I'm just like, all right.
She's complaining about how skinny her legs are, and it's like perfectly shaped.
Yeah.
Right?
She's like calling them chopsticks. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Really?
So they both look like that.
Yeah.
And we're getting that Jessica's kind of a bitch, and that Elizabeth is like
Kind of a pushover.
Kind of. Like, basically.
She's literally like the doormat.
Well, I'm very glad to hear you guys say this, because there are a lot of people out there that strongly identify as a Jessica, and this book especially makes me feel like, how is that possible?
Oh, I know several Jessicas. I don't know if I would identify with her, but I know several Jessicas. And I mean, Jessica's creativity in the sense that like she just makes shit up.
She
like
is
all the time.
She is a very creative liar.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the whole point, that they kind of complete each other, even though they have...
Because Jessica likes to boss people around and Elizabeth's okay with
even
being
though, like, it seems like Jessica takes advantage of Elizabeth. I mean, as you see towards the end of the book, she kind of gets her revenge a little bit.
But Elizabeth also tries to at least kind of keep Jessica in check. So I think they balance each other out.
See, I didn't get that at all, because you constantly have these italicized thoughts where she's just like, no, I'm not going to say anything. It's not worth it.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, bitch, it is worth it.
I have the biggest smile on my face right now listening to you guys talk about Elizabeth and Jessica and debate their merits. I think the idea that they're two halves that together make a full, healthy person is just so beautiful. But also, yes, totally. I underline, now having read a lot of these books, I get so mad because going back to the first one, I can see how it was planted in the very beginning. Like, basically the root of every problem in this book, which we'll get into in a second, what the problems were, is that people just aren't being honest about their feelings.
Yeah.
And if Elizabeth had just said, Jessica, I have a crush on Todd, Jessica would have backed off because she doesn't care that much about Todd.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that in a
Of course,
second.
then you wouldn't have this book.
Fair enough. We know
Shortest book
conflict.
ever.
Right.
Conflict is the heart
And they
of
live happily
any
ever
drama.
after.
So, one more thing about the basic setting before we launch into the further details of the plot. So we live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
This is set in the fictional Sweet Valley, California. Do we think this is like somewhere nearby?
Oh, I 100% saw this in the Valley.
Okay.
No,
Like,
this
Valley
is
like
Girl
NorCal.
2.0.
I honestly, I immediately thought Pacific Palisades.
Yeah.
Like,
I could see it.
hands down, this is like some privileged shit. Like, they are so in their own bubble. It's almost comical.
So, the very beginning of the book, we find out that Jessica and Elizabeth have pledged Pi Beta Alpha.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because high schools have sororities now.
I was like, what?
Apparently, that's a thing.
That's definitely not a thing.
There's a fraternity, too.
Yeah. What?
They
seems a little
are
strange.
too young for that stuff.
And I have to say, like, no offense to any sorority people out there, but another thing that puts me...
Hey.
Well, you want to rep your sorority here?
Woo, Kappa, Kappa, Gamma.
Okay, so, but I felt like Jessica was so invested in getting into Pi Beta Alpha, PBA, and Elizabeth is like, she's not like not gonna do it, but it's like, I'm gonna do it because Jessica's gonna do it, and we do everything together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she's a little bit weirded out, even that Jessica cares so much.
I mean, it is a little weird how much Jessica cares.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, does it really matter that much?
When they read the names of who got in, Elizabeth is nervous that Jessica got blackballed, which is something that becomes important in later books.
Because they totally do that, like, fake out, where it's like, oh my god, only one of them's gonna get in. And of course it's the one that doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, that was really cruel. They called Elizabeth's name like 5
And
minutes
then
before
Enid
Jessica.
gets
Yeah, I
in.
know.
And I'm like, why does Enid want to be in this?
Yes, Enid Rollins,
Elizabeth's best friend.
Yes, Enid Rollins, Elizabeth's best friend, who Jessica is so mean to constantly. Yeah. She calls her wimpy, and in this book, something I don't think continues that much, she constantly refers to her as Eeny, like E-E-N-Y, which is a really shitty nickname.
Especially, I feel bad. I'm like, how tall is this girl?
I definitely imagined her as very short. Kind of like me. Short, brown hair.
Like, sadness, glasses.
Yes, actually.
Do you have a dark secret?
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, but now that
Yeah, you do?
Now that
Yeah, I
Kat
do.
has thrown sadness into the ring,
Aw.
I think I want to rescind my previous comment.
Okay, well, we'll talk about how you identify as Enid, as un-Enid later.
Yeah.
But Jessica's very mean to Enid, and Elizabeth is like, she knows that Enid is really cool. I actually really like this about Elizabeth, that she doesn't really, I mean, I would love for her to defend Enid a little bit more, but I like that she's like, all right, Jessica, if you don't want to like a really cool person because she's not loud, then that's fine. That's your business. You can go hang out with Lila Fowler, who's like the biggest bitch in school. And who you kind of hate. Like, they're serious frenemies. Lila doesn't factor in too much.
I'm like, does Jessica actually have friends in this? Or is it just people that she, like, occasionally hangs out with?
Manipulates
Yeah.
and accuses of things.
Yeah.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So Todd calls the house. Jessica fields the call, and Elizabeth jumps straight to Todd and Jessica are like having a thing. Yeah, she's really nervous about Todd liking Jessica, because who wouldn't like Jessica? All the boys like Jessica.
Yeah.
Again, never mind the fact that they're twins, they look the same, and Elizabeth is more interesting.
And a nicer person.
But I think the books aren't wrong that high school guys might be more attracted to the, like, ostentatious, like,
Definitely.
sex pot. Like, she dresses more sexy.
Yeah, not the quiet girl sitting in the back doing your homework. That's not interesting.
Jessica's already borrowing Elizabeth's clothing.
Yeah.
Right off the
Quick
bat.
aside, what is a tuxedo shirt?
And a bow tie, apparently, she was wearing.
What is that?
Okay, on first take, I was totally imagining just literally one of those t-shirts with a tuxedo printed on the front.
Me too.
And I was like, nice.
It's clearly dressy.
Well, because then I had the other extreme
It's the
of like
80s.
those powder blue like
It is the
tuxes
80s.
with like a frilly shirt underneath it.
I think that's kind of the.
know.
I think it is. It's got like the double, like the breast, like the
Yeah.
kind of shirt you would wear with the tuxedo. I think it must be.
Okay, because that's kind of what I was like. Well, it can't be the t-shirt because that'd be weird.
All right, I'll see if I can find a picture.
I kind of imagine this kind of slutty looking halter top.
All right, so we have so much more to go in the story. So, the other thing that comes up in the first chapter is that Dad, Ned Wakefield, their father, who is a lawyer, has been working late a lot, and he's going to be working late again. He's working, with Mariana West, who is his assistant, and she's very beautiful divorcee, which is important.
Recently divorced. Ooh.
We'll come back to that. So we go to school, and Jessica steals the car real quick.
Yeah. 16-year-olds
parked
should not
there.
drive a Fiat.
Well, no one should drive a Fiat. But she,
Yeah.
like, parks it, and then Jessica steals it.
Well, first
and, like,
of all,
parks it next to the hot guy.
Let's bring some more context to the situation. So basically, Jessica throws a hissy fit because she's not allowed to drive the car
Because she got in an accident.
And so Elizabeth gets to drive the car, and Jessica just bitches about it the entire
Like
time.
it's Elizabeth's fault that Jessica
Yes.
got in trouble.
That she got in an accident.
Yep.
And Elizabeth just tunes it out. Jessica then is like, gets a big smile on her face, and suddenly the car is gone. Elizabeth makes a date to to meet with Todd later on, and so she's really excited about that. Fast forward to the end of the school day when Elizabeth sees Todd and Jessica drive away in the Fiat, which she forgot to get the keys back from Jessica.
Jessica gave her a hug and stole the keys.
Yeah.
So that she could make a grand entrance.
That basically tells you everything you need to know about Jessica Wakefield.
Pretty much, yeah.
And she parks it next to the Porsche.
Yeah, the Porsche owned by Bruce Patman.
Bruce Patman.
Yep.
I don't know if this comes up in this book, but Bruce Patman's license plate, incidentally, is 1 Bruce 1.
Of course it is.
So that tells you about Bruce Patman.
Yep.
He's very sexy.
All in the license plate.
Yep.
But in this book exists mostly just to be kind of a rich jerk.
Yep.
Doesn't play a huge role. So Elizabeth is really upset that Jessica and Todd have driven away together. And then somebody comes into the newsroom for the school newspaper and asks Elizabeth about the Eyes and Ears column of the Sweet Valley High newspaper at the Oracle. Mm-hmm. They don't know who writes the Eyes and Ears column, which is this gossip column. We know that Elizabeth writes it, and nobody else has any idea. And that sets up this idea that if the students at Sweet Valley find out who writes the Eyes and Ears column, that person gets like dunked in a pool at some sort of party
With their clothes on.
With their clothes on. So hold on to that. Mm-hmm. But this person comes in and is like, whoever that person is should know that they should write in Eyes and Ears about the hot new couple.
Wasn't it Lila Fowler that told her that?
Oh, I thought it was like Kara Walker.
Oh, Kara
She's
Walker.
like the third mean girl with Jessica and Lila.
Yeah.
Is Kara Walker. So Kara Walker comes in and she thinks it's so funny. Like, it's such a good scoop because they're both captains.
Right.
Jessica Wakefield, captain of the cheerleading squad, and Todd Wilkins, captain of the basketball team. They were
Match
singing
made in
together.
heaven.
Just like One Tree Hill.
Exactly. So that's what Kara says. She says, Elizabeth, you have to write about this. It's just like One Tree Hill. And Elizabeth is crestfallen, but like is super keeping it to herself.
Yeah.
Again.
I'm not going to tell anyone.
No, but doesn't she tell, like, the news editor?
Oh, Mr. Collins, but I think she doesn't name names.
Vents to him about, like, the boy that she likes or something.
Mr.
Yeah.
Collins,
That's funny.
Mr. Collins is like the only voice of reason in this whole series.
Especially, it's kind of weird because they, like, describe him as, like, a good-looking, like, older teacher.
He's really sexy.
And I was like, that's kind of weird.
It is kind of weird.
Definitely weird. But very sexy and has a very close relationship with Elizabeth. So
Not at all weird. Plot for another book.
Right.
Jessica is out with Todd. We learn later that Jessica has told Todd that she's going to explain things to Elizabeth, and it seems like she's maybe cooked up some lie that dragged Todd away.
She's literally scheming on, like, page 4 already.
Yeah, she's got lots of schemes. In fairness to Jessica, she doesn't fully get how in love with Todd Elizabeth is, and Elizabeth doesn't tell her because she's like, if Jessica's happy, I want her to be happy. I'm not going to step on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And at this point, she doesn't know that Todd's actually interested in Elizabeth also.
Right. And this is the beginning of the complications that arise because they look the same. So it's like, Elizabeth even thinks at one point, like, oh my God, that moment we had when we locked eyes across the cafeteria, he thought he was looking at Jessica. It all makes sense now. Yep. That's why he was looking so lovingly at me.
Exactly.
Elizabeth comes home. Her brother Stephen Wakefield is there. Stephen's a college student. Mm-hmm. And
apparently also very attractive.
Super hot. Every Wakefield is hot. Almost everybody in Sweet Valley is hot.
It's hot.
Yes.
Exactly.
And
there's like 2 unfortunate looking people, and that's it.
Yeah. Winston Egbert and
Enid.
Oh, Enid Rollins.
Oh, I never really got the feeling that she was unattractive. I just got the feeling that Jessica thought she was like a nerd.
I think nerdy in Sweet Valley is code for ugly.
Oh,
You might be right about that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we'll meet some more less attractive people later, but Steven's home. He and Elizabeth engage in this weird conversation about like how ugly they both are. It's like a fun game they play where they tease each other for being ugly.
Oh man, must be nice.
But Jessica takes like severe offense to it.
And then he's like, "Woman, make me a sandwich."
Yes.
Do we remember that part?
That's like verbatim what he says.
And then she
right?
does it. She does too.
Yeah.
It's Elizabeth or Jessica?
Elizabeth.
Of course it is. I don't know why I even asked.
Because then Jessica comes in and like interrogates Steve about why he's home and what his intentions are.
And tries to set him up with Kara Walker.
Yes.
Right.
Becomes important later, but
Who
that's
is
Benny.
in high school.
Which is also really weird because why would you want to set people up with your brother?
Well, and in fairness to Steven, he's like, Kara Walker, she's a little young for me.
Exactly.
And Jessica's like, she's really matured a lot.
She's ready to
still
date
16.
college men.
Yeah.
That is exactly what she says. She's ready to date college men.
Like,
So-
yeah, that's odd.
I have to just point out, I read this book on like a Kindle version of this book that I borrowed from the library, an ebook, and one of the many very strange popular highlights was this line from Jessica after she's upset that Stephen and Elizabeth keep calling each other ugly. Mm-hmm. It says, "You wouldn't think it was funny if you really were gross looking," Jessica said, shuddering at the thought of having anything other than an attractive family.
Oh my god.
But also, let's not forget, like 8 hours ago, she was complaining about being the ugliest person in the world.
You're so right. You can't deny it. Jessica tries to get Todd to ask her to a big dance that the sorority and the fraternity are throwing together. She's dropping a lot of hints. Todd, because he's not into Jessica, is like, okay, well, you'll find a date. Good luck, sweetheart.
Right.
And she is livid.
So pissed.
So she walks right out the door, and who should pull up in his, I don't remember, some kind of sexy car he's driving. Do you remember that?
Camaro?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but are we talking like 80s Camaro or like he's got a classic 60s?
I'm gonna go with 80s.
I don't know. Knowing Rick Andover, who is the person in question. Rick
But this is
Andover,
Sweet Valley, so
Yeah.
maybe it is.
His daddy probably bought him, you know, a 60 whatever to help him fix it up.
Rick Andover pulls up in his Camaro, and he says some gross
Hold on.
shit.
I got
Something
it.
about, like,
I got
hey,
it.
heaven.
I found it. Pardon me, heaven. Which way to Mars?
And Jessica's like,
What?
Damn.
Literally, what?
so she's like grossed out and turned on at the same time by Rick Andover, and she goes in the car with him. She makes a
Well,
date
because he's
with
like
him.
hot and dangerous, but also like a little bit weird because he's 16 and like dropped out of school or something.
He dropped out of high school.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
the bad boy. He's like so openly lecherous, and there's something about that really appeals to her.
And she doesn't get creeped out until like later. And like really none of this was like warning, warning.
Yeah, she sneaks out on this date with Rick Andover, and he takes her to Kelly's, where she's never been to Kelly's before, and orders her a Boilermaker, and suddenly she's all like, I don't want to be here. She realizes what a bad idea it was.
Yeah.
I'm like, no shit, you didn't know where that was going?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't want to like ever say that Jessica asked
I mean,
to
she
be.
knew where it was heading.
She clearly
just, like,
knew.
went with it.
Not only did she know where it was heading, like that was what she wanted,
and then she's like down to drink beer, but draws the line at whiskey.
she doesn't know what a Boilermaker is. The waitress serves it, and she's like, "Oh, thank God, it's just a beer." Like I'm 16, but it's cool for me to just drink a beer, which is one of the truer things.
But
in
like,
this
nah,
book.
man, not whiskey.
know.
And then she's like, oh, he's getting really drunk. He's like slurring his words, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh no, a few more drinks and he can't drive. I'm like, yo, he's already drunk. He picked you up drunk.
He's like always drunk. He's Rick Andover. At the very least, he's drunk enough to punch a guy who tries to keep him from following Jessica out of the restaurant or out of the bar, Kelly's. And then the cops come immediately.
I know, I love how quick their response time is. Damn, Sweet Valley.
It's a small town that really cares about its law-abiding citizens. So the cop asks Jessica her name, and she's like, oh, you don't need to know that. But he's like, nope, I really do. I'm going to tell your parents. And she's like, Wakefield. And he's like, oh, Elizabeth Wakefield. That's my daughter Emily's friend. And Jessica is like, okay. And the book describes it like she's just so caught up in her own feelings that she didn't even think to correct him.
Really? Because the first words out my mouth if someone called me the wrong name were going to be like to correct them.
Yeah. Well, and so the cop is like driving her home, decides not to tell her parents, hooray, except then he gives her this really specific dressing down as she's standing on the street. He's like, listen, Elizabeth, don't go to Kelly's, don't get in bar fights, don't hang out with Rick Andover.
Expository dialogue.
Yeah.
So just like everything, like basically gives down all the specific rundown of what she did and calls her Elizabeth. And who hears this? Their neighbor, the very nosy Carolyn Pierce, who then proceeds to tell the whole
Phone
school.
is the switchboard for Sweet Valley High gossip.
Yeah, and it's a white princess
Oh,
phone.
of course.
So she spreads this rumor very quickly, which she thinks is true, through the
Right.
whole school. And the school all
Because
thinks
according
it's true,
to
too.
what she saw, it totally is true.
Yes, I
Yeah.
saw Elizabeth Wakefield, and she got arrested. She was hanging out with Rick Andover. She
Yeah.
was at Kelly's drinking. There was a bar fight. Holy shit.
Yeah.
And the whole school is like, oh my god, I can't believe Elizabeth had it in her.
Yeah.
Like, Bruce Patman is even like, oh, I didn't know you had it in you.
Well, of course, because then he's like, oh, damn, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Jessica does nothing.
Jessica does
Precisely.
nothing.
Even when
Elizabeth-
Todd starts like freaking out and trying to confirm like that this was Elizabeth,
Well,
who
yeah.
also, by the way, everyone just like believes.
Yeah,
way
even
too
Todd.
quickly.
Todd is very sure. He even says multiple times, like, it's a fact. It just is a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Enid, even
He's the
Enid.
only one.
But even Enid at first is like, Elizabeth, you can tell me anything.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's okay, we're friends, you can be honest with me, which is probably leading to some secrets that Enid
Oh,
maybe wants to
for
reveal.
sure.
But
Yeah.
you can tell me anything. But Elizabeth is like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah. And then Enid is like, okay, well, I think that it happened, but I'm past that now. Like, I just
Yeah.
forgive you.
She's very
and
big on,
Elizabeth's like, what is going on?
Well, Enid has a crush on this guy, Ronnie Edwards, and Ronnie Edwards gives this whole talk when they're hanging out at the beach. It's Enid and Ronnie Edwards and Todd for
Yeah,
some
Todd
reason.
like third wheels it for some reason.
And Ronnie is like, oh, I can't believe Elizabeth Wakefield. I could never hang out with somebody that would do something like that,
Yeah,
which is a weird attitude for a
course.
teenage boy to have anyway. But then Todd is like, oh yeah,
I know, it's like
definitely
polar
happened.
opposites because he's like, oh my god, I could never do that. And then what's his butt with the Camaro is like, oh my god, that's so hot.
Oh, the one with the Porsche, Bruce
Yeah,
Patman.
the one with the Porsche
Yeah.
is like, oh my god, that's so hot. Why
Yeah,
have I
so
never seen
hot.
this girl?
Like, oh, like now, I never looked at you twice before, but
Right.
now that's Bruce Patman.
that was probably like the one time that I really admired Elizabeth was when she confronted Bruce Patman, because that
Yeah.
was some of the greatest comeback work
Oh yes.
I have seen her do in
But
this
then
book.
also-
Do you remember what she said?
She says, oh man, it's so good. I'm gonna find it.
So Bruce is so impressed with this theoretical, like, crazy thing that Elizabeth did and how, like, wild and awesome she is.
He actually calls her Roadhouse Rhonda.
Yeah, he calls her Roadhouse Rhonda and then is like, want to go on a date with me? Like, he insults her. He's
Yeah.
totally negging her, right?
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
And then she goes, Bruce Patman, I'd rather stay home for the rest of my life than go anywhere with you. And then,
Awesome.
And then so Winston is standing there, and Elizabeth tells Bruce that she already has a date, and Winston speaks up
Well,
from
because
behind
Bruce
her.
is giving her shit, like, no, you don't. Like, I don't
Yeah.
believe you.
Yeah,
So
and
then Winston saves
Winston's
the day.
like me, and Bruce goes, "You, the joke of the school," and then Winston delivers this treasure. Yeah, well, maybe I'm a joke, but you're an insult.
Classic Winston
Burn.
Egbert.
And then Bruce goes, "You stupid nothing. I'll fold you up and stuff you in the trash can."
I totally respected Elizabeth after this because Winston's just like, hey, yeah. She's like, thanks so much. And he's like, yeah, you're welcome. Bye. And she's like, no, like, we're going to the dance,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
like kind of holds him to it, which is awesome.
These are all things. Great
I
things
like,
to
I
look
would
at.
go on a
him.
date with Winston.
yeah, I mean, he totally just saved your ass.
Yeah.
Like,
and he's
and-
like funny.
And he's so funny.
exactly. And she even says in the book, like, I'll go, we'll have a good time.
All right, so we can accept Winston Egbert as a potential suitor for Selah.
Yeah.
He has a little bit of a rude sense of humor, but, he's the class clown. He does what he can.
Yeah.
He throws it all out there. And
I
seems
dig
like it's a
that.
laugh.
And it's not, he doesn't have like malintention behind it. It's
No.
just, he says it.
Right. The other thing that I really like about Elizabeth, even though it's kind of another pushover thing, but I think there's integrity to it, is that when she confronts Jessica about this rumor, Jessica's like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, do you really want me to tell everybody that this didn't happen?
Yeah.
And Elizabeth is kind of like, you know what? Real friends of mine wouldn't believe this. So it's okay. And she does, now she does want Jessica to tell Todd. And Jessica agrees to tell Todd. And
But
Jessica
then that
does
bitch-
tell Todd. No, she does.
Yeah, but she doesn't convince him.
That's true. So they're back at school. Tells him, look, it was me. Todd says, oh my God, that's so noble. It's the most
You're,
noble
like,
thing I've ever
protecting your
heard.
sister.
I think that's his direct quote. It's like, that's the most noble thing I've ever heard. And then he fucking kisses her right on the spot, asks her to the dance, because...
But I'm like, okay, so Todd might not know these girls very well by now, because he's, like, projecting Elizabeth's personality onto Jessica. And it's like, oh my God, you're protecting your sister, which is, I feel like, what Elizabeth would do, and kind of is doing, because she's just letting herself take the blame for this shit.
The point stands, Elizabeth is right, that, like, somebody who really was friends with her wouldn't just believe this. And Todd believes it so fervently.
Everyone
he doesn't
believes
want to
it
believe
so
it.
quickly.
Well, this is, like, the number one thing in this book that makes me say, like, okay, stop. This is bullshit. Because why would anybody in this entire school honestly think that it was Elizabeth and not Jessica? Like, why haven't they seen The Parent Trap? Like, why wouldn't they just put this together right
no
away?
one said, like, oh, I would have thought Jessica would do that?
Yeah, that sounds more like a Jessica thing. Like, probably a mix-up.
Right.
Yeah.
But nobody does. They all think Elizabeth is just a wild child now. And Jessica doesn't do anything about it, except for apologize to Todd. She must be able to tell that Todd didn't believe her, but I think in her heart of hearts, she's like, well, I told him.
Exactly. So therefore, she's
Not my
like,
fault.
she's
Yeah.
righted her wrongs in her mind.
Okay, so a couple of B-story things that are happening right now. Stephen Wakefield, their older brother, home from college, seems like he has some kind of secret.
Right.
And when Jessica is confronted by Elizabeth about what she's done, Jessica immediately changes the subject because she's genuinely distraught. She's just found out that Stephen is dating Betsy Martin. Betsy Martin, who...
Isn't she like a hooker and she's a drug addict?
She's a hooker, yeah.
She's easy.
Okay, whatever.
She's always on drugs.
Yep.
She's been on drugs for years.
Yeah.
And their father
Which is probably just like pot.
I know, right?
Yeah,
This is
and-
Sweet Valley, and
But
she's
it's Sweet
16.
Valley.
Mr. Martin is like bombed out of his mind all day, every day. So
Yeah.
how could Stephen date his daughter, who is also a known whore?
Yeah.
And they're very upset. Eventually, they confront Stephen about it. And Stephen is like, no, not Betsy Martin. And they're even like, oh, thank God, because Betsy Martin is trash.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I know. She's trash. And that's why I didn't want to be seen with her sister Trisha, who's the one I'm really dating.
Yeah.
And man, that was a big mistake because she found out I was embarrassed to be seen in public with her and she sent me packing. Now I'm so depressed that I'm
Which
going to
is
stay in
just
my
like,
bed all day.
go Trisha.
I love
Yeah.
how also literally everyone in this book, like Elizabeth is so in love with Todd. And then Stephen's like, I'm so in love with Trisha. And it's like, yo, you probably just met.
Well, and then eventually Ned Wakefield like talks Stephen out of his depression and is like, you need to just go talk to Trisha, which is basically the way that everything in all of these books is solved.
If
Like,
you
just
tell
talk
the
to them.
truth.
Yeah. Just like expose your feelings, guys.
Exactly.
It's not that hard.
So Stephen shows up to Trisha's house where Trisha Martin is walking her like super drunk father to bed and is like, Daddy, just sleep it off. And
Which is so depressing.
It's
But
so
then she's
depressing.
also immediately just like livid with him. And he's like,
Yes.
oh my God, I was such a dick. And she's like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, I love you. And she's like, I love you too.
yeah, so immediately
Fastest 180
Storyline
Yeah.
over.
Immediately she goes from, I thought I told you I never wanted to see you again, to I love you too, Stephen. So they're in love. Everything is cool. Meanwhile, there's the big dance.
Right.
Elizabeth goes with Winston. Jessica goes with Todd, but Todd cannot take his eyes off of Elizabeth the whole night, and Jessica notices.
And Jessica's also awkwardly like staring at Todd the whole time, to the point that Winston's like, hey, did you forget about me?
Elizabeth
You're
is
dating-
staring at Todd.
Or
Yeah, Elizabeth is staring
yeah.
at Todd.
Elizabeth stares at Todd like the whole
Yeah.
night, and Winston's
So-
like, yo, did you forget about your date?
Winston says something like, I think we're both here with the wrong people, which is also acknowledging the fact that Winston, for some reason, has a huge crush
Ow.
on Jessica.
Of
Never
course.
gonna happen.
Everyone
It's like
does.
Screech and Lisa. Like, it's never gonna happen. So
It's like a classic Princess and the Frog
Yeah,
situation.
always.
Elizabeth, though, doesn't seem to fully notice that Todd has been staring at him staring
Even
at
though
her all
she's
night.
been staring at him all night.
Well, regardless of whatever hope Elizabeth has at the end of the dance, it is dashed when what should happen, but Todd doesn't kiss Jessica goodnight. He gives her a kiss on the cheek.
Like, she goes in for the kiss, though, and he, like, avoids
He
it.
kisses her in the cheek like a brother. Yep. And Jessica is not having any of this. She is going to destroy him immediately.
It's like the snub of the century.
But then I was, like, so
it.
pissed, because then she immediately just calls rape, and I was like, whoa!
Yes. Now, we need to pause and talk about this, because the measure that Jessica jumps to is to go tell Elizabeth that Todd has, like, been all over, hands everywhere. I don't even want to talk about it. Like, she doesn't say he raped me, but she pauses in such a way, like these books expertly do. They don't talk about sex. They say things like, Miller's Point, you know what happens up there. Yeah. And, like, maybe they were kissing, maybe they were ... That's what Elizabeth is thinking about Jessica. And then it's just like, it's just too horrible to think about. Like, the book avoids mentioning sex.
Yeah. Right.
And that will continue.
Yeah.
But Jessica all but says he raped me because it's like his hands were everywhere. I don't even want to tell you. Yeah. And Elizabeth is distraught. She's immediately like,
but again,
he's dead to me.
Exactly. Again, she just like immediately believes this totally outrageous thing about this person she supposedly knew.
And this is the foundation of like the greatest romance that Sweet Valley will ever know. I'm so shipping Elizabeth and Todd forever. I can't help myself. They just love each other so much. And I realize in reading this book, their whole romance is based on just like a fundamental mistrust.
Yep. Yeah.
But I guess they didn't know each other that well yet.
They couldn't have.
Elizabeth basically is like, okay, I'm done with Todd. I'm going to move on. I'm going to date other guys. Jessica goes about her business. Like, life continues.
Yeah.
They're all at the Dairy Burger. The,
Dairy with an I.
Dairy with an I. The burger and ice cream hangout that everybody hangs out at. And like,
because this is still the 1950s.
I was totally picturing like American Graffiti at this point.
Yes!
They're all chilling outside with their cars.
Oh my god,
like,
we had the
soda.
We had the same thought.
I mean, it technically never says when it's set.
That's true.
That's true.
But the tuxedo shirt. I mean,
the tuxedo shirt.
80s,
also, the slinky dress that Jessica was gonna wear that was gonna make Todd pant.
I
know.
Yes. And she says it. It's not just like the book's commentary.
Yeah, I'm like, no. I'm like, bleh.
She says it's definitely gonna make Todd pant. This is the same girl that like a day ago was freaking out because she basically led on this like lecherous guy and he put his hand on her knee.
Yeah.
It says that he like moved up her thigh.
Well, I don't want to call tease on anybody because that's not my place. But like, Jessica, just think a little bit. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. Do you want to make a guy pant? Because
he did, and it didn't work out very well.
Yeah. She definitely does want to make him pant. She wants to make every guy pant.
Exactly.
But I think it's really just that she's a control freak. She wants everything to be on her own terms, which you know what? Everything should be on terms that people both agree to. But the fact that she gets so mad when either things happen either way that aren't exactly the way that she was
like when you plan out that conversation.
Consent is important, boys and girls.
Yes.
Yes.
Consent is important, and that goes both ways.
And use a condom.
Exactly.
Always.
When you're at Miller's Point.
Yes.
But like, so consent is so important. So Jessica doesn't give her consent to Rick Andover, and Todd doesn't give his consent to Jessica.
Yeah.
Exactly. But then Jessica's pissed when she like can't kiss Todd.
She's a bad representative of womankind. So anyway, what were we talking about?
But Elizabeth's not much better because she doesn't stand up for herself.
She's such a pushover.
Yes, and that goes back to them completing each other because if they just took from each other.
Things are winding down. They're at the Dairy Burger. Elizabeth's getting over Todd. And basically Rick Andover, drunk, shows up and essentially like carjacks them. Like, he takes over the car, and they're like, oh my god, he's taking us to Kelly's. Like, not Kelly's. That's the bar, Kelly's.
They just immediately know, like, where they're going.
Yeah, hold on. First of all, he's gonna carjack them and then stop? And that makes sense.
Jessica is like, this time the cops will arrest us for sure, and there'll be no way out of it.
Yeah, because some dude just hopped in your car and took off. Like, what?
But because Todd Wilkins, also at the Dairy Burger, he sees this happen, and he's like, fuck no. He sees
it happen, and at first he's all like, oh. And then he's like, he sees the terror in Elizabeth's face and just knows.
He's a nice boy who drives a Datsun. He's not like that flashy Camaro guy. Although Rick Andover is also not driving the Camaro at this point.
And they're like, I didn't know it was you in that car. And he's like, my car's in the shop.
Yeah. So Todd follows them to Kelly's, where of course Rick Andover was going because it's the only place he goes.
Yeah.
Todd follows them there and gets out of a car and like blocks Rick's path. Like, no, you shall not pass.
Right.
And when Rick is like, fuck you, and punches him in the face, and then
Todd totally just like takes him out.
Yeah, because he's the captain of the basketball team. So then a very weird thing happens where Jessica says to Todd, Todd Wilkins, I could kiss you. And Elizabeth says, no, Jessica, it's my turn.
That made me so angry. Like, literally so livid.
I mean, but after that, Elizabeth and Todd are in love, so it's all okay.
That scene's so
Everything's
dumb.
fine. They're gonna have a great and healthy
Everything's
relationship.
fine. And I'm just thinking, like...
Well, no, he, like, forgives her.
Oh, yeah.
For the whole Rick thing. And then she's like, that wasn't me, you idiot.
Yeah,
And
they had that kind of miscommunication earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Where they were both, like... sort of accusing each other of stuff, and he's like, but I forgive you, Liz, and she's like, you forgive me for what? After what you did?
Exactly.
But he doesn't know either. He doesn't know what Jessica
so they're both
accused
just
him
like,
of.
what the hell are you talking about?
Oh, and then Elizabeth really goes into it with Jessica.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Jessica just comes clean and it's just like, I hate myself.
Of
That's
course.
why I
Well,
did
this is
all
the moment
this.
that we were kind of waiting for the whole book, where finally Elizabeth is like, Jessica, we need to talk.
Yeah.
How could you possibly do something so horrendous to me?
And not set the record straight immediately.
Jessica cannot bear to be called to account, and she just like loses it, and she confesses very honestly. Finally, a moment of honesty from Jessica, where she's
But it's like they've already tried to have this conversation.
That's true.
Yeah.
And Jessica
many
was just
times.
like, oh my god, I don't know what you want me to do.
She's always changing the subject, or like passing blame, or
Yeah.
like blaming it on a misunderstanding. Now, actually, she kind of admits that she did it on purpose. I knew that if I took the blame, I would get kicked out of cheerleading, because no slutty cheerleaders is a rule at Sweet Valley that is hard to wrap your head around, but it continues, this theme. And if they thought that I was up to no good, if they found out that I did this, I would not be allowed on the cheerleading squad anymore. And Elizabeth is like, but what about me and like the consequences for me? And Jessica says like, well, but there weren't really any, because you're you.
And also she says, if I would have asked you, wouldn't you have said yes anyway?
Would she have said yes? What do you think?
But
She
honestly, though,
totally
at least
would
she would
have.
have like not saying it's any better for Elizabeth to totally just be a doormat, but at least she would have asked.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
Consent.
can you take the blame for this?
It's a different kind of consent.
Right.
So,
That's the theme of this book. Consent.
So what I love, like maybe my favorite thing in the whole book, is at the very end when you think that pushover Elizabeth is like, she's finally gotten her apology all squared away.
She got the guy.
But she got the guy.
Yeah.
Jessica doesn't care because she was never into
not
Todd.
about to let this go.
And so she and Todd devised this awesome plan to like prey on Jessica's constant desire to borrow Elizabeth's clothes. Elizabeth dresses up in the tuxedo shirt, whole outfit that she let Jess borrow at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
Then purposefully spills water all over Jessica's clothes right before they leave for school. Then
Sneaky.
plays up a very boring Elizabeth outfit as being like, oh, my new thing that I just pressed and I love so much, to really prey on Jessica's desire to have all of Elizabeth's best things.
Right.
So that she gets Jessica into this very boring like jeans and blue Oxford button-down outfit. Mm-hmm. And then the three of them, Jessica, Elizabeth, and Todd, drive to school together. Elizabeth sneaks off, pretends to be Jessica, and tells everybody that Elizabeth is the Eyes and Ears column editor. And look, she's right down there next to Todd.
So then all the guys come and grab her, and she's all like, oh my god, but I'm Jessica! And they're like, no, you're not. You're Elizabeth. You're the writer of this column, and we're going to throw you in the pool.
They throw her in the pool. This time she says she's Jessica right away.
Right.
Of
course she does.
Exactly.
Of course she does.
Because she knows what this means.
So we got through the whole book. I want to talk a little bit about boys.
Oh, 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 who's a beautiful boys, a beautiful boys. I'm in danger of losing my head to a beautiful boys.
Boys, boys, boys.
We like boys,
Boys
in
in
cars.
cars.
Let's talk about boys in this book. Like, obviously, center in my mind and in my heart is the budding relationship between Elizabeth Wakefield and Todd Wilkins.
Because Todd is gorgeous.
Todd is gorgeous. Todd's entrance, like his first description in this book, is like stuff from a romance novel.
Oh my God.
Elizabeth in chapter 1, they describe like when she's thinking about meeting eyes with him across the cafeteria, and it says, as she caught sight of him leaning against the front railing, his sky blue shirt open at the throat to reveal a glimpse of tanned, muscular chest, Elizabeth's pulse took off at a gallop. And then she goes on to talk about his blinding white smile and his coffee-colored eyes dancing. And it's just like, yeah.
These people are so hyperbolically described.
They're very beautiful, Selah.
They have the whitest smile, the blondest hair,
Well, they live in
the
Pacific
tannest
Palisades,
legs.
So
Yeah.
That's why you want to hang out with them, because they're
I know.
beautiful.
Yeah.
most.
This
whatever it
book is like, I mean, these books are just like a total escape
Yeah.
into a very perfect world that just has
They're like the
petty
Stepford
problems.
high school. Like, everyone's just like a cookie cutter, and then you've got like the few weird outcasts.
So what do you guys think of Todd?
Well, I mean, he's the star of the basketball team. Like,
Yeah.
how could you not love him?
I like Winston.
Okay.
Dude, Winston's the best.
Selah likes Winston. I ship that, Selah and Winston.
I'm all about the underdogs.
I feel like Kat's into Bruce Patman.
I mean, he drives a Porsche and he's got a lot of money, so
All right. Meanwhile, I'm Todd Wilkins forever. What can I say?
Yeah.
Love basketball.
Totally.
I'm into tanned
yeah.
chests.
No, it's all
sky,
about like
sky blue
the
shirts.
American. He's like the boy next door, but he's like also Fabio. I'm a little confused
know
on
what?
how Todd actually looks,
This is
but
a
I'm
fair
down.
point. This
I
is
like
a fair
it.
point. Actually, it's not even about the muscular chest or the like white teeth. It's honestly the way that his like every line to Elizabeth once they're like in love is so romantic that I
Yeah.
fall for. I'm such a sucker for it. Even though I know cognitively that his line about there only ever being her, like it was only you, it was always you, Elizabeth, is like total bullshit because he kissed Jessica. He knew it was Jessica.
Yeah.
I mean, he was operating under a misconception that Jessica was more like Elizabeth than she is, but like he thought Elizabeth was kind of a hoe, you know?
Yeah.
But then when he found out the truth, he didn't like shun Jessica.
No. Which is to his credit. Good job, Todd.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's good, but at the same time, it's like you're not treating them fairly.
It's
like,
kind of amazing that anybody's still
Well,
talking
but then
to Jessica.
Elizabeth
the end of this
would,
book.
yeah. I mean, Elizabeth would immediately stick up for Jessica, and
well,
like,
of course.
like there's no way that Todd would not be able to talk to Jessica and still date Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Like that would never
Yeah.
happen.
But then Jessica earlier is like, oh my god, I couldn't bear it if he picks me up for dates and you can't talk to him.
That's why she says she's going to explain what she did to Todd, because she can't have Todd thinking that Elizabeth is like a bad person, because when Todd comes to pick her up for dates, we don't want Todd not to talk to Elizabeth. It was like,
That's so absurd.
well, and if she knew, she was really rubbing salt in the wound, but apparently she doesn't really know that Elizabeth has a crush on Todd, although she does offer Elizabeth the out, like, do you have a problem with me dating Todd? Because it seems like maybe
I
you
know.
like him.
There's your chance, Liz.
Yeah.
Take it.
He doesn't take it. As long as we're talking about boys, I just want to point out that when Rick Andover pulls up and sees Elizabeth and Jessica for the first time, he very cleverly refers to Jessica as heaven and Elizabeth as heavenly. Because he's so smooth. No takers for Rick Andover?
nope.
A beautiful boys, a beautiful boys, a beautiful boys.
So now that we've talked about the whole book, you guys are familiar with the world of Sweet Valley, California, / possibly Pacific Palisades. You've gotten to know our stars and some of their supporting cast. What would you say? Are you a Jessica or an Elizabeth? Let's start with Kat.
I hate to say it, but I'm probably... I mean, I'm definitely a combination of the two. But probably more Elizabeth, because even though she, like, is a total pushover, in the end, she still completely stands up for herself and even gets in a little scheming of her own to get some revenge.
All right. What about you, Selah?
We already know you're Enid.
Yeah. But besides that, I would basically agree with everything Kat just said. Like, I wish I maybe had more of the confidence of Jessica.
Yeah.
But I think deep down, I'm pretty much an Elizabeth.
Jessica knows she's hot shit, and she's not afraid to act on it.
Which is funny, because she looks the exact same as Elizabeth.
It really is.
Who
kinda
does not
funny.
know she's hot shit.
Yeah. I am deeply in Elizabeth, for better or worse, and there's no denying it, but the important thing is to know thyself.
And love thyself.
You know what, Selah? If you want to identify as an Enid, I think you should just wave your Enid flag.
Let that freak flag fly.
As you guys have now learned, having finished your first Sweet Valley novel, every book ends with a tease for what the next book is going to be about. So I thought maybe I'd ask you, Selah, to read the big tease for book number 2, which will also
cliffhanger.
it will also serve as a tease for episode number 2 of Sweet Valley Diaries.
Yes.
Drum roll, please. What is the dark mystery in Enid's past, and how does Jessica use it to her own advantage? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 2, Secrets.
Ooh. Well, thanks everybody for listening to the first ever episode of Sweet Valley Diaries. The show is produced by me, Marissa Flaxbart, and I want to thank Lauren Shippen and Jocelyn Schofield. Her song, Beautiful Boys, is from the album A Witty Girl, and it's available on iTunes. I really love the album. There's another song on it called Bad Boy in High School that could totally have been written about that awful Rick Andover. I'd also like to thank Mary-Kate Battles, Don Flaxbart, and of course my delightful guests, Selah Kahrmann and Kat Hazelton. Thanks for being game to kick this thing off with me.
Thank you.
Of course.
Are you one of the many people out there who self-identifies as a Jessica? Do you ship Elizabeth and Todd as hard as I do? Do you have fond and or complicated memories of Sweet Valley to share? Email the show at sweetvalleydiaries@me.com, or better yet, record a voice memo and send it to me. This podcast is a logical offshoot of the blog sweetvalleydiaries.net, and we're on Twitter at Sweet Valley. Thanks.
Does that make me Miss America?
You're doing great.
Share the continuing story of the Wakefield twins and their friends, their laughter, heartaches, and dreams. And Selah in the refrigerator.
Still for just like 5 seconds. It's okay.
Pause for room tone.